Good morning. The time is 8:30, and I call to order the June 14, 2024 meeting of the Contractors State License Board. I'm Diana Love, CSLB's Board Chair. Because this meeting is in California, I will lead the Pledge of Allegiance for us all, and then do the California roll call, after which I will turn it over to the Nevada Board Chair, Boyd Martin, to open their meeting. Then we will go into open remarks. Now, if I could please have you all stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I will now note for the record that the California board members Mary Tykert, Michael Mark, and Alan Guy have approved absences for today. Also joining us at the table is Registrar David Fote. David, please confirm the California roll call members in attendance.
Thank you, Chair Love. Starting with you, Diana Love.
Present.
Michael Mark has an excused absence. Miguel Galarza.
Aye.
Joel Barton.
Present.
Thomas Ruiz.
Here.
Amanda Gallo.
Here.
Susan Granzella.
Here.
Alan Guy has an excused absence. Jacob Lopez. Henry Nutt.
Present.
Steve Pinelli has an excused absence. James Ruane.
Here.
Mary Tykert has an excused absence. Did I miss anybody?
Rodney Kobos.
Oh, Rodney Kobos.
He's excused. I think he has a meeting today, he told me.
Okay. We have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you, Registrar Fote. Before I turn over to my Nevada counterpart, Chair Boyd Martin, a note about today's business. The hotel internet is not available for today's meeting. The meeting is in person only, with no remote participation option, and the meeting is not being live cast. All agenda items are discussion only with no voting items. Staff are nonetheless recording the meeting for the record and will make the recording available to anyone who asks. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chair Martin. But before I do that, I just wanted to make one quick statement. The Nevada Board only takes public comments at the beginning of the meeting and at the end of the meeting, so you won't hear them call for any public comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Love and members of the board. I'm Boyd Martin, Chairman of the Nevada State Contractors Board. Joining us today from the Nevada Board are Executive Officer Margie Green and Board Counsel Noah Allison. Ms. Green, have the notice has been posted?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the notice was posted on the board's website, the Nevada Public Notice website, both offices of the State Contractors Board, and emailed to persons who have expressed interest in being kept informed of the board's meetings.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Please note for the record that Member Calvin and Member Lay have excused absences today. Chair Martin?
Here.
Member Calvin? Member Hernandez?
Here.
Member Leggett?
Here.
Member Polish?
Here.
Thank you. Please note for the record we have a quorum. Ms. Green, would you please read our mission statement?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Nevada State Contractors Board is committed to ensuring the integrity and professionalism of the construction industry in Nevada. The NSCB has a responsibility to promote quality construction by Nevada licensed contractors through a regulatory licensing system designed to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Lastly, Mr. Allison, have you had a chance to review the agenda, and does it comply with the open meeting law?
Yes, I have had a chance to review the agenda, and it does comply.
Thank you. Ms. Green, are there any changes to the agenda?
I have no changes at this time.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Now is the time for public comment. The board values public input and welcomes public comment. To allow us enough time to conduct our full schedule of business today, I will be limiting public comment to 3 minutes apiece. There are a few rules that apply. First, Nevada law prohibits members from discussing any matter brought up during public comment and we are not allowed to act on any item not on the agenda. Secondly, if you have an application, complaint, or disciplinary charges pending before the board, we ask that you do not discuss the details of your case or pending complaint. That is because board members may be judges in the matter and by law are not permitted to receive evidence or information that is not part of the administrative record in the case. Is there anyone present to offer public comment? If so, come to the microphone and, well, there is no microphone. Oh, there's a microphone there at the end. Come to the microphone and identify yourself, please.
Okay.
Ms. Green?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to note on behalf of the board, I have a few quick comments to share my appreciation to Registrar Foat and his staff for working alongside of our staff and myself in recent weeks to prepare our agenda and materials for today's meeting. It's always a pleasure to hold these discussions, and we learn from each other. And so thank you again for California for hosting our meeting today. I'd also like to introduce to the California Board our newest staff member, who is Randy Escamilla, who has done a wonderful job in his role as Public Information Officer since February with the Nevada Board. Mr. Escamilla comes to us with a background in television broadcast and public relations, and we are extremely impressed with the advancements he's made to educate the public thus far. Lastly, I'd like to announce that this will be my last meeting with the Joint Board. I have announced my retirement, which will be August 1st of this year. So I'd like to say thank you for all of you for hosting us all these years and working with us, and I'm looking forward to this next chapter in my life. So thank you. That concludes my remarks.
And before I turn it back to Chair Love, I'd just like to, on behalf of Nevada, and I probably without question would say California boards, thank Margie. I believe her first year of working for the board was in 1986, is that correct?
86, yes.
Continuously since 1986, she's been involved in Nevada construction and leading the way, so we greatly appreciate her, and thank you. And
Thank you.
With that, I'll turn it back over to Chair Love.
Thank you. And I'm pleased to welcome the Nevada State Contractors Board to beautiful Newport Beach, California, for our 15th annual joint meeting. It goes without saying that this long-standing partnership has contributed to the development of best practices and strategies as we work toward our mutual public protection purpose. I just want to make a few comments about Margie Green's last meeting. I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge Margie. I understand this will be her last joint meeting prior to her retirement after 38 years at the Nevada State Contractors Board. Margie, I know from speaking to staff that your partnership with our executive office and our board has been invaluable, and that you will absolutely be missed. Congratulations on your retirement. And with that, I believe David Folt has some comments.
Yes, thank you, Chair Love. I think all of you from Nevada certainly recognize that Margie Green is a leader in Nevada. She's also a leader on the national stage. Margie is a past president, past treasurer, long time on the board of directors for the National Association of State Contractor Licensing Agencies. NASCLA is an organization that has 48 state members. And in that, with her participation with NASCLA, but also as the executive officer for Nevada, she was instrumental in attending meetings nationally when there was a deregulation movement. It's my understanding that she was appointed by Governor Sandoval, Nevada Governor Sandoval, as only one of two board executive officers in the country to attend meetings to explain the benefits of licensure, how it protects consumers. And I had the honor of attending meetings where she made presentations on what she had learned and the speaking points that she had to, again, demonstrate the benefits of licensure. The last NASCLA meeting that I was at with Margie was in San Antonio, Texas. And I thought it would be appropriate today to show a picture of Margie at that meeting. So.
That's the fun side, right?
That's right.
But just in closing, I just want to really personally thank Margie for all of the communication we've had over the years. I've learned a lot from her. She's been a true partner in regulating contractors. So thank you, Margie.
Thank you so much, and thanks for showing that wonderful picture.
Thank you, Chair Folk. And I also want to say that we very much appreciate the hospitality and meeting with us last year in Nevada. It was a pleasure being there, and I'm sure this is not the last time that we will see you.
No.
And I know you will be giving your advice and all those 38 years of wisdom that you have stored up to this gentleman here and others who will seek out your consultation of how to keep Nevada safe. So thank you.
Thank you all.
So with that, I will move forward into public comments for items not on the agenda and future items requests. And I just want to say thank you, Chair Martin. And California will now turn to its public comments. And we have similar rules, as was mentioned by Chair Martin. So I will start with, the board values public input as part of our consumer protection mission. To allow us enough time to conduct our schedule of business today, I'm limiting public comments to 3 minutes apiece. If your comments don't involve an item on today's agenda, this would be the time where you can make them. If you have comments on one of our agenda items, we encourage you to wait until we get to that item. We will give you an opportunity to make your comments at that time. We also ask that your public comment relate to the agenda item currently before the board. There are a few other rules that apply. First, California law prohibits board members from discussing any matter brought up during public comment, and board members are not allowed to act on any item not on today's agenda. If you want the board to discuss a topic not on the agenda, you can ask us to consider placing that issue on the agenda for a future meeting. And finally, if you have an application, complaint, or disciplinary charges pending before the board, we ask that you do not discuss the items and the details of your case or pending complaint. And that is because board members may be the judges and by law are not permitted to receive evidence or information that is not part of the administrative record in the case. Are there any comments from the public? Seeing none, are there any comments from the board? Do you have any items for any future meetings? Yes, go ahead.
Chairman Love, if I could, I just want to state for the record the board's recognition that today is Flag Day. I know we open all our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our country. We've said it so many times, sometimes we forget the meaning of it. We do not fly our flag upside down. We do not burn it. We do not trample upon it. And especially those men and women who serve our country, who pledge their allegiance to the flag of our country. Let's remember them. Every time we say the pledge, those have given everything and some their lives for the country and the flag of our country. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other public comments? Seeing none, that concludes CSLB's public comment, and I'll turn it back to Chair Martin.
Thank you, Chair Love. Our first order of business is a presentation by Ken Simonson, the Chief Economist at the Associated General Contractors of America. Mr. Simonson is a leader across the industry for his insights into the economy and how it translates into construction, and has over 40 years of experience analyzing, advocating, and communicating about economic and tax issues. He is a fellow and past president of the National Association for Business Economics and is the co-director of the Tax Economist Forum, which is a professional meeting group he co-founded in 1982. And he is here with us today to provide an overview of the current state of the economy, both nationally and across Western states. Mr. Simonson.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity, and particularly appreciate Margie Green inviting me to present to this group. I wish you the best in the next phase of your life. I'm sure all of you are familiar with AGC, but just for the record, we're the National Construction Trade Association covering the entire industry other than single-family home building. We operate through a network of 89 chapters, including chapters based in the Reno area and in Las Vegas and in Sacramento and San Diego. Our members do every kind of construction other than single family and include over 6,500 general contractors, 9,500 specialty trade contractors, and about 10 to 11,000 suppliers of equipment, goods, and materials and services of all types. So what I want to talk about today is what's going on with construction employment and labor costs. I think that's the number one concern of contractors, and then a little bit also about materials costs. Fortunately, that has faded a bit as a concern, supply chain issues, and where I think different segments of construction are headed. So I'd welcome questions from you at any time. And sorry if the slides are going to be hard for some of you to see, but what we're starting with here is a picture of how construction employment has changed on a year-over-year, on a cumulative basis since February of 2020. You'll recall the huge shutdown of construction activity, along with much of the rest of the economy, that occurred as the pandemic gripped the country really in March of 2020. But construction employment bounced back very rapidly, and in California, your decline in return matched the country at first, but over the last year and a half, California's construction employment has been hovering at just about the same level, whereas the U.S. has been adding construction jobs every month, as shown by the black line here. In the last 12 months, this data goes through April, U.S. construction employment increased by over 3%, whereas in California, about 1.5%. And cumulatively, since February 2020, the U.S. has added almost 8% to its construction employment total. It's up to over 8 million workers. California is above the February 2020 level, but by only 1.3%. The story is quite different in Nevada, as the next slide shows. That, we do have metro figures also, and the picture does vary quite a bit in the California metros. The Los Angeles, Long Beach, Glendale Metro Division has the largest number of construction employees. As of April, almost 150,000, but that was down by 1% over the previous year. The second biggest area, Riverside, San Bernardino, Ontario, up by 3%. Here in the Anaheim, Santa Ana, Irvine Metro Division of the greater LA area, basically flat. To the south, San Diego, Carlsbad, up by 3%. Sacramento, Roseville, Arden Arcade, up by 4%. And then Oakland, San Jose, San Francisco divisions all down by 2 to 5%. So quite a bit of variance among the larger metros. The Bureau of Labor Statistics also provides figures each month on construction employment in about 15 smaller metros in the state. AGC ranks all metros in the country for which BLS posts data, 358 of them, and I'd be glad to supply that full set of data. Moving to Nevada, the story much brighter there. Nevada's construction employment has been rising much more steeply than that in the country as a whole. It's one of the top gainers in terms of construction employment since February 2020, now up 22% in the last year alone, an 8.5% increase in construction employment. Very strong. The next figure shows what's happened in the two metro areas, quite balanced. In the Las Vegas, Henderson, Paradise metro area, up 8%. In the Reno, Sparks metro area, up 9%. And then we have a map that shows what's happened in every state. We'll be getting the state figures for May next Friday, and I'll update this map. What it shows from April of 2023 to April of this year, an increase in 39 of the states. California, as I mentioned, 1.7%, somewhat less than the 3% gain nationwide, but still positive. And then Nevada, like its neighbors to the east and north, exceeding the national average by quite a bit, tied with Michigan, interestingly, for the fifth largest construction employment gain in percentage terms. The colors on this map do move around a bit from month to month, but the patterns have been fairly consistent, that the states to the north of you, Washington and Oregon, have been losing construction employment on a year-over-year basis in several of the recent months, and then some of the states in the Northeast and a few scattered examples in other parts of the country losing. But most of the country adding employees at a greater rate than the national picture, which has been about a little less than a 2% gain, about what California shows for construction. Moving on, this shows that contractors actually want to hire a lot more employees than they've been able to find. And so that map would be a brighter green and fewer pink states if they could do so. This contrasts two lines. The blue line shows the number of job openings on the last business day of every month. And here I show the April figures going back to the beginning of this series in 2001. This is a series the Bureau of Labor Statistics calls the Job Openings and Labor Turnover Survey, or JOLTS. The red line shows the number of people hired during the entire month. So you would expect in a 30-day month, in the case of April here, that there'd be a lot more people hired over the 30 days or the 22 or so work days than there are openings on a given day. And that was true from 2001 up until 2019. But in the last 4 or 5 years, those lines have converged. And in this case, once the number of job openings actually exceeded the number of hires in the whole month. Just lately, down a little bit, but still suggesting that the industry wanted to bring on board twice as many people as it was able to find. Another indication that the industry is really still hungry for workers comes out in this series. It's layoffs. I didn't graph that here, but layoffs dropped by nearly 50% from April of 2023 to April of 2024. And so even while job openings and hires may have dropped a little in that period, suggesting some cooling off, the fact that contractors are not laying off workers indicates that they expect to have more for them to do very soon, and that this lull or this decline is temporary. Let's look at what's happening with compensation. As part of the National Employment Report, BLS puts out figures on a series with the unwieldy name Average Hourly Earnings for Production and non-supervisory employees. In the case of construction, that would cover the craft workers and also office workers who aren't supervisors. So in these two graphs, I've contrasted that production employee wage series in construction to the entire private sector. And it turns out that from 2000 through 2019, that wage premium, as I called it, the construction pays to get workers to come out and work in all kinds of weather conditions and in not the most pleasant surroundings sometimes, and to get up earlier than I like to get up at all, and stay out on a job site no matter what. That premium averaged 21.5%, as shown by the blue line. It never went below 20%. Well, when the pandemic hit, and so many of us were cooped up at home, ordering food to be delivered to prepare at home rather than going into grocery stores, or preparing ready-made meals and having goods shipped directly from warehouses rather than risking going into stores, warehouses and delivery companies and restaurants greatly increased their starting pay from, in many cases, minimum wage or even less for some tipped restaurant employees. I was seeing signs that fast food places for $14 $30 an hour starting pay, basically double what people have been paying. So the premium shrank, not because the construction starting wage or median wage dropped, but the floor came up that much. You can see that with the steep drop in the red line showing that premium at the beginning of the pandemic. Well, since then, it's been edging back up, but it's not up to where it was before. Now, there are also figures on construction subsegments, and I looked at that just in the last couple of days. I don't think I've provided a slide on it, but it turns out that heavy and civil engineering construction firms and non-residential building construction firms, their premiums have been rising at a much steeper rate than this overall picture. The construction, the increases in pay vary a lot. The box at the lower right shows that construction overall raised average hourly earnings for production workers 4.6% over the last 12 months. And that compares to a 4.0% increase for the private sector. But pay has been going up by 6.5% for heavy and civil engineering contractors, the ones who are doing highways or maybe high-speed rail or other infrastructure projects, and 6.4% for non-residential building contractors, the ones that were putting up distribution facilities in the Inland Empire or manufacturing plants and data centers. And so I do think that construction pay is going to have to keep rising at a much higher rate in order to bring that premium up to historic levels or even go beyond, now that so many other jobs can be done remotely or on a hybrid basis and with flexible hours, things that still aren't possible and not likely to be for on-site construction jobs. The next slide here compares that wage premium, the average hourly earnings for production employees in construction. Sorry, not the premium, but the year-over-year increase. That's the blue line. It's been going up at roughly a 5% rate for 3 years now. Compares that to what's been happening to materials costs. And this is shown by a series called the Producer Price Index for inputs to new non-residential construction. That's a weighted average of the cost of all materials plus services such as design and trucking services used in construction. And we just got May figures yesterday morning, but through April, the red line, at first, it declined as the economy contracted so sharply at the beginning of the pandemic. Materials costs actually declined compared to the same month of 2022. But very soon that turned around. We saw record prices for lumber and steel and copper, and much more frequent and steeper than historic increases for many other materials, ranging from concrete products to gypsum products, roofing materials, certainly plastic pipe. So that red line was rising at a 20% or greater rate for 12 straight months in 2021 and 2022. The last spike occurred when Russia invaded Ukraine, and we again saw record prices for diesel fuel and copper, a big spike in steel prices. Once things began to calm down, those price increases moderated. In fact, you can see the red line going below the 0 point for several months in 2023, meaning the prices in those months were less than in the same month of 2022. Well, so far this year, prices have been increasing again. The May figure showed a 1.9% increase compared to May of 2023. But nevertheless, I don't think we're going back to hyperinflation that we had during the pandemic because the supply chain has, for the most part, improved greatly. That retailers and suppliers to construction are finding that they can get most things with normal, predictable lead times. There are two significant exceptions to that, switchgear and transformers. And these, the lead times for switchgear, I'm told, are often quoted at the beginning of a project as 50 weeks, almost a year. And without switchgear, you can't distribute the power or make sure that it gets shut off if necessary within a building. Transformers, the lead times are as long as 2 years from some specialized transformers. Well, contractors have generally adjusted to that. They've been able to inform owners. They've been able to place orders much earlier than they had. They've been able to look for substitute equipment to install on a temporary basis. But unfortunately, those lead times are not predictable. I'm told quite often contractors are within 2 weeks of expecting delivery, and they're told, no, it'll be another 2 months, and then the equipment shows up without warning. So this continues to be a challenge for getting projects completed on a predictable schedule, and certainly affects the bidding prices. More recently, we've also heard about big shortages, delays in delivery of mineral wool insulation. And this is kind of a side effect of owners wanting to prove that they are green. They're reducing their carbon footprint by reducing use of petrochemical-based insulation, rigid foam insulation or blown insulation, and instead have turned back to the older mineral wool insulation. There just isn't enough capacity. But by and large, not major holdups on delivery of materials, and much calmer pricing than before. So let me move on to what's going on with bid prices. Now, this is something as an association for the industry. I certainly don't ask contractors what they've been charging, what they will charge, don't say what they should charge. But BLS does ask a large number of contractors each month, what would they charge to put up a particular building? And if the contractors here are among those who are plagued by those questions, thank you for taking the trouble to answer. It allows me to plot that on this graph. The blue line shows what's happened to that bid price increase, again, on a cumulative basis since February 2020, compared to the run-up in materials cost increases as shown by the red line. And at the beginning of the pandemic, as I mentioned, the input prices actually dropped briefly, but then they soared, peaking, as you see, in the spring of 2022. Then the bid prices stayed flat for quite a while. I hope that contractors weren't paying attention to me, but I was swallowing the Kool-Aid and saying, oh yeah, any inflation is transitory, as Secretary Yellen and others in the administration and the Fed were saying. But once it proved to be so steep and persistent, you can see that the bid prices also started rising. So we briefly had a time at the beginning of 2023, when contractors' bid prices had almost caught up with their input costs. But in the last year plus, those bid prices have again stayed flat, and we saw that also in the May data that came out yesterday. So again, this gap is widening, and meanwhile, as I said earlier, the labor costs are rising at a much faster rate. So my expectation is that labor costs will go up somewhere like 6 to 8% for these production or non-supervisory or the craft workers. Not as much for salaried workers, but nevertheless elevated compared to what we had been seeing before the pandemic. Materials costs likely to rise perhaps in the 2 to 4% range, so not as bad as in the peak period, but again, certainly rising, whereas the actual bid prices, I'll let you guess where those are going. I'm not going to make a forecast, but looking back, we can see that there have often been periods where the materials costs rose much more than the bid prices. These periods in red are when that happened, and we're into one of those intervals again now. Let me move on to what's happening with just a few of the materials. Even though most of them have calmed down, this shows that from April to April of this year, from April of 23 to April of this year, cement prices went up 7%. Used to be that cement would go up by a few percentage points once or twice a year and then kind of taper off later in the year. But they've been persistently rising for the last 3 years. And I think that's because nobody wants to have a cement mill in their neighborhood or their county, and so the supply has stayed fairly level, whereas demand is growing from highways and other infrastructure, solar fields, giant manufacturing and distribution plants. And so I think this is a material that we may again see shortages or at least delays in delivery of ready-mix concrete and perhaps of precast concrete materials. Looking now at construction spending, total construction was up 10% from April of last year to April of this year, according to the Census Bureau, which puts out estimates on the first of each month. All of these non-residential categories as defined by census and private residential construction are in the green, meaning they had an increase over that period. But as the next slide shows, there is more nuance in this. Census actually reports on over 160 non-residential categories each month, and a few of the categories are in red, meaning they had a decline. But at the top, you see that 10% increase. Private residential single family was up 20%, multifamily up 2%. This is a real reversal. Single family declined sharply as interest rates went up in 2022. Lately, the mortgage rate has more or less stabilized. Yesterday, Freddie Mac reported that the 30-year fixed rate was a little under 7% for the second week in a row. A lot higher than 2 or 3 years ago, but nevertheless no longer climbing. And I think we'll see more and more people decide that they can afford to either pay cash or buy down the amount of mortgage so that the monthly payments are affordable. We're also seeing builders subsidize the interest rate, at least for a period of time, produce smaller houses, cut their selling price somewhat. So I do think we'll continue to see some rise in single-family construction. Not a 20% rate, but I think high single digits. Meanwhile, multifamily, as the developers finally get hold of those transformers and switchgear, finish-off products, they're being put into a market that suddenly has a glut in many metro areas. And so for now, rents are falling in some places, they're coming close to stabilizing in others. And meanwhile, the financing costs have risen so sharply, and banks have tightened up, particularly since the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank a year ago, that it's much harder for developers to get the financing they need or to cover it through rent increases. So I think we'll see a steep drop in multifamily construction for the rest of the year. Turning to the non-residential categories, I think the financing costs and the flat or falling rents are also having a big negative impact on warehouse and office construction. A little harder to say where things are headed with retail and with lodging. It's really market by market. Stories this week in the New York Times about how well shopping centers are doing, and in the Wall Street Journal about how well restaurants are doing, show that some retail is certainly thriving, but older shopping malls really in desperate shape. Many downtown areas. I live in D.C., and I see more closed stores and restaurants than ones that are opening in some of the historic office markets, and that's certainly been true in San Francisco, parts of Los Angeles, and San Diego as well. So I think those markets are definitely very spotty. But overall, non-residential construction should be doing very well again this year, thanks to unlimited demand for data centers, still strong growth in manufacturing construction, and then much more money coming out of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act for highways, for rail projects, Amtrak, and perhaps for high-speed rail, and then also under the Inflation Reduction Act and CHIPS and Science Act, supporting advanced manufacturing plants and renewable energy projects, whether solar fields, transmission lines, utility-scale battery storage. The biggest challenge is going to continue to be finding workers, and that will be a persistent challenge for the long term, but in two ways. First of all, all industries are facing more people heading to retirement age, whether it's contractor boards or contractors themselves. And in fact, while I know some economists who are still doing their job in their 70s, I don't see many people out on construction sites doing that. So I think construction will face a challenge earlier, or is facing that challenge earlier, in replacing experienced workers than some other industries where the working conditions are perhaps less demanding. But in addition, demand for construction will continue to evolve. As population growth slows, fewer increases in homes. We'll always need more housing, but it won't be increasing at the same rate as we saw 2 decades ago. And with that, less demand for new streets and underground utilities and schools and public safety buildings. Evolution in how goods are delivered, whether it's to a warehouse with a higher automation, much higher clearance, and the last mile delivery to customers. Evolution in how power is generated, transmitted, stored, and put into homes and businesses and vehicles. And evolution in healthcare. All of these affect demand for construction. So to close, here's a map that shows where population changed last year. Nationwide, it was up by almost 0.5%. That matched just before what we saw just before the pandemic, but far less than at the beginning of the last decade. And California was one of 8 states that lost population, not as severe as the 2 years before, but still in decline, along with all of the Pacific Coast states, Alaska and Hawaii, as well as Oregon and Washington gained, but not nearly as much as it had been. Instead, people are moving to all other states, but particularly in percentage terms, your neighbors to the east, the Intermountain West states, have had much higher than previous population growth in some cases. In the rest of the country, continuing decline or slow growth in most of the Northeast and the midsection of the country, elevated population growth in the Southeast and Texas. And I think those patterns will continue. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it till I get new data. When I do, I'll put it in the Data Digest. It's my weekly summary of economic news relevant construction. There's an issue going out today. I'd be glad to add any of you to the email list. Just email me at ken.simonson@agc.org, and I'll be glad to send along the latest version of my slides also. And I encourage you to look at agc.org for lots of other information. Now, happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Simonson. Are there any questions from board members or discussion?
I was just curious, you showed on one of the slides that there was increase in workers in both Alaska and Hawaii, which seemed kind of weird to me because, I mean, Alaska's kind of remote and Hawaii's kind of small, so how do you justify that?
I think with Hawaii, the story has to do with the repair and rebuilding happening in Maui right now. But the trend in Hawaii has certainly been weaker than it has in most other states. Alaska always has a lot of fluctuation up and down. And these figures, while they're seasonally adjusted, when you get unusual weather patterns in a given month, they're likely to show quite a difference compared to a normal month. So I think Alaska had much less severe weather in April of this year than it did in April of last year, and that enabled projects to start up sooner, hiring to take place sooner than had been in the case in 2023. In general, while I think it's useful to look at that single month year-over-year comparison, really to give you a better picture, I should be showing moving average of months or a series of graphs, but even accustomed as I am to looking at graphs, it gets to be a bit much to absorb. But anyway, that I think is the explanation for those 2 states in this particular month.
Ken,
Yeah.
I know we both were in D.C. earlier this week, and the big topic of discussion being PLA. So I am very interested to seeing how it affects other parts of the country and the continued growth in some of the other states that are not familiar with or don't have a prevalent union workforce to draw from. and to see what the ramifications are of that executive order.
You're right. Project labor agreements are a huge area of discussion and controversy right now. The Biden administration has said that all federally supported projects, so that would be not just for federal agencies, but private projects or state and local projects that are receiving federal funding. That's how most of the federal highway money gets distributed, the water and sewer projects, and now a lot of advanced manufacturing and energy projects are getting either a direct federal contribution, tax credits, or federal loan guarantees. So much vaster range of projects being touched by this requirement to have, not requirement, but in some cases absolute requirement, and others strong encouragement to engage in project labor agreements. And these have not been typical, even with federal agencies. They have typically examined whether to have a project labor agreement, but a study that AGC undertook after the Obama administration was encouraging them found that in over 99% of the cases, the Department of Defense decided not to go with a project labor agreement. But now the administration is saying if the project has over $35 million of cost, PLA is required. There's limited opportunity for waiver, but I think that this is definitely, it's a learning process for the agencies. I've spoken to national meetings of Corps of Engineers people and General Services Administration people. They're really trying to learn what this requires, how to apply it, whether a waiver is possible. And I also expect litigation. AGC was part of a group that sued to stop this initially. That did not go forward, but it's going to be contested for a long time to come.
Through the chair, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how artificial intelligence works with AGC and the tremendous amount of energy required to run it.
Well, there's certainly a lot of, again, a lot of interest, I would say experimentation at this point among contractors with not just artificial intelligence, which in fact has been around and applied for a long time, but generative AI, in which software suppliers are applying so-called large learning language modules where they are trying to apply historical information to new applications. And I've seen some demonstrations by contractors of ways in which they are using it. They think that this is helping them either generate much wider range of designs or adapt designs much more quickly, to also apply it to contract language, to workforce management, recruitment, training, and management of workforce. But clearly it's very early days yet. We keep hearing in the press about rapid evolution and introduction of new variants of AI. AGC, as an association, we have about 70 employees in Arlington, Virginia, and on Capitol Hill. All of our 89 chapters have their own staffs, and we're having frequent discussions within AGC of America and with our staff, with the staffs of the chapters to learn how they're using it, how they're serving contractors better, or trying to provide educational opportunities to contractors to want to learn more about it. But if you have more specific question, I'd be glad to refer that to my colleagues. I can't tell you here's a way that AI has changed construction yet, or changed what associations are doing to serve construction industries. I'd say it's still at an experimental stage, but I think we will continue to see lots of experimentation and adoption in different areas.
Any other
questions or comments?
I got one question. I saw in your presentation there, it perfectly makes sense regarding how the people are moving out of California, and I looked at some of the states, and I think they're, from what we've seen in our end, right, is they're going to where the work is at. So I saw a lot of people going to, Idaho, CHIPS Act, right, big manufacturing plants. So people are going where the work and the cost of living is a lot less. But one of the things I had a question was on the material in regards out of country, right? How is that impacting, construction overall here in the United States?
Certainly, when President Trump put on 25% tariffs on steel and 10% on aluminum, we saw an immediate jump in prices of those materials. Many other specific items were subjected to 25% tariffs if they came out of China in particular. President Biden modified the tariffs on steel and aluminum to allow a certain degree of imports from trading partners, not from China, and more recently has greatly increased tariffs on solar panels from China and on selected other items. So those things have definitely driven up the cost of construction materials. When a tariff is put on, it is a one-time price increase. It's not automatic that it will flow through to the customer, but that has been the effect that domestic producers have generally matched that price increase on the imported product right off the bat. So it causes a jump in that producer price index, not a continuing rise, but we're at a stage where, again, more tariffs are about to take effect or have taken effect. As that flows through from the import point of import, the dock, to the distributor or the contractor, I think we'll see, again, some acceleration of producer prices. Now, the theory, the hope, I guess, is that by restricting imports, you'll encourage more domestic production. That really hasn't happened with steel. That yes, there were some plants that have been announced that are coming on stream, but I think that was happening as a result of technological change, not suddenly restricting the imports. So I'm not optimistic that we'll see a big expansion of production. I think we will see higher prices as a result of more tariffs. And certainly if Mr. Trump is reelected and follows through, just this morning I was reading that he's been speculating on whether all taxes could be replaced with tariffs. This would take us back to the way the federal government was funded basically before the Civil War, when total expenditures were a good deal less. I think we would see an astronomical increase in tariffs and in costs. But short of that, I do think that the main impact of tariffs is going to be increasing costs for contractors, not leading to an expansion of domestic production.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, I will appreciate Mr. Simonson and appreciate you being here today. Very informative presentation. Thank you. And I'll turn the time over to Chair Love.
Thank you, Chair Martin, and thank you, Mr. Simonson, for that detail and the slides and all the information that you have provided us with here today. And before we go forward to the next item, I'm going to ask, are there any other board members who have any comments or questions? And also, are there anyone in the public that has any comments or questions?
All right. Well, thank you very much for this opportunity, and hope to stay in touch with all of you.
Thank you so much for coming. Moving forward to our next agenda item, which is agenda item D. It is a joint discussion with the Nevada State Contractors Board, and I'm pleased to turn it over to Executive Officer Margie Green and Registrar David Folt to lead us in this discussion.
Thank you. The data I will be sharing for Nevada is from as of April 30th, 2024. Nevada's active license count is 17,948 contractors, which has increased 504 from our meeting last year, while our inactive license status has declined slightly by 10, coming in at 414. Overall, our net gain is 494 with a total license count of 18,362. That was in June of 2023. Our license application fee is $300 with our initial license fee, and renewal fee both remain constant at $600. Our handyman exemption continues to be available through statute for work performed under $1,000 that does not require a license or building permit or affect the health and safety trades. We maintain license endorsement agreements with 12 states, including Alabama, Arizona, California, Connecticut, Florida, Hawaii, Louisiana, New Mexico, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and West Virginia. These agreements allow applicants to request waivers of certain trade exams and experience based on licensure in one of the participating states. On average, we see about 5% of our new applicants utilize this process during their application for licensure. As we look at our investigation statistics during the reporting time, enforcement has received and investigated 1,550 complaints against licensed contractors and nearly 600 against unlicensed contractors. We also want to bring to your attention the number of complaints filed against solar contractors, which represents nearly 250 for our discussion later on in the agenda this morning. This is a figure that continues to increase and an area our board is working diligently on with other agencies and through the legislative process to mitigate some of these problems. As a result of these investigations, eligible homeowners have been able to submit claims to the board's Residential Recovery Fund, which had awarded over $881,000 during this reporting period. As we continue to see an uptick in solar complaints, which often results in large groups of homeowners submitting claims against a single contractor, I also wanted to share that our 2024 year-to-date figures has doubled over the prior year's award amount. Since its inception in 2001, the Recovery Fund has awarded nearly $15.8 million to harmed homeowners, and that includes the Nevada portion of the presentation.